The wind erased everything, even sound, even light. On the northern plains, winter didn't visit, it ruled. Snow buried the land so deep, even firewood disappeared. No trees, no forests, just wind sky and people who refused to leave. They had no chimneys, no coats, no modern gear, only instinct and memory. They learned to burn what wasn't wood, to build warmth from the ground, not the flame. Each ember a plan, each ash a memory. Archaeologists still find proof bones, scorched black hearths, lined with clay soil rich with ancient smoke. 7 heating tricks born from need, not comfort. Each one tested by storms that could kill in hours. They didn't outfire the winter, they outsmarted it. The wind erased everything, even sound, even light. Out on the northern plains, winter wasn't just a season, it was a test. When the snow came, it didn't fall. It swallowed. It covered the land, the lodges, the trails, even the firewood itself. There were no trees to cut, no forest to hide in, only grass sky and the will to last another night. So they learned to burn what the land gave back, fuel from the herd, warmth from the earth shelter that breathed with the wind. Each trick came from patience, not invention, from memory, not luck. Archaeologists still find the proof: ash pits, scorched bone clay hearths, buried beneath frozen soil. Every trace a story, every ember a choice. They didn't fight the cold, they worked with it. Beneath the frozen plains of North Dakota, the Mandan built their warmth into the earth itself, not above the ground, but within it. In 1936, archaeologists uncovered the remains of those ancient lodges, fire pits carved 30 to 40 centimeters deep, their walls lined with clay and fine ash, each one shaped to trap heat and hold it through the night. The people called it a living floor. When the fire burned low, its heat sank into the clay. By morning, that same clay breathed it back. No smoke, no wasted flame, just a steady rise of warmth from below. It wasn't a mistake of design, it was intention, a system that turned the earth itself into part of the hearth. Each pit worked like a slow radiator, a perfect mix of soil and air. Tests in later reconstructions showed that the floor temperature stayed 6 degrees warmer than the outside ground all night long. They didn't call it technology, they called it staying alive. Because to them, survival wasn't about comfort, it was about understanding what the land could do. The fire was not on the ground, it was the ground. Cold below, heat above. They slept between both worlds. In the frozen forests of Manitoba, the Cree built their winter lodges over shallow pits 1 meter wide, lined with reed mats and fine ash. The discovery came from a 1954 field survey, confirmed decades later by thermal imaging at Fort Severn. Even today, the soil still tells the story, a faint ring of white ash beneath what used to be the sleeping area. The trick was simple and brilliant. Ash absorbs moisture. It also traps air, creating small, dry pockets that stop the frost from rising. The reed mats above held body heat in place, while the ash below kept the ground from freezing solid. By morning, the difference was clear. 6 degrees warmer at the floor than outside. No modern insulation, no tools, just understanding. The Cree didn't fight the cold. They engineered around it with what the land gave them. Every handful of ash was memory. Every reed a boundary between worlds, the frozen and the living. When the snow pressed down on their roofs, they didn't complain. They adjusted, because warmth to them wasn't comfort. It was control. Cold below, heat above. They slept between both worlds. The chimney breathed like the teepee itself, not wide open, not sealed shut. It learned to flex with the storm. On the Kansas plains, Pawnee winter lodges carried a simple control hide curtains hung inside the smoke hole. Field notes from a 1912 excavation described post stains and tie points around the vent. A few years later, researchers reported the same idea in the Journal of American Ethnology. 1915 adjustable baffles made from hide. The craft was straightforward. 2 or 3 panels of thick, smoke-cured hide. Rawhide thongs to hinge and tether, a reach pole to nudge the panels as wind shifted. When the north wind pushed hard, the curtain narrowed the opening. Draft slowed, heat stayed. When smoke built up, a quick pull opened the throat, and the fire cleared its own lungs. No choking, no wasted warmth, just a living balance between flame and air. Inside, you could feel the logic with your skin. Less roar at the roof, less sting in the eyes, a deeper heat holding low where families slept. Archaeology helps us see the details. Experience explains the point. Those tie holes and soot rings weren't decoration. They were the fingerprints of control, a thermostat made of hide. They didn't own dampers, gauges, or fans. They owned time patience and a curtain that moved with the wind. The chimney breathed and the house stayed alive. They built warmth from the ground up, not by burning more wood, but by understanding how the earth itself holds heat. At the Milk River site in Alberta, a 1967 excavation uncovered a pattern of circular carbon stains beneath what used to be Blackfeet winter lodges. Under each sleeping area, researchers found impressions of woven willow stacked 3 to 5 layers deep. Each mat trapped a thin pocket of air, and that air became insulation. It was quiet engineering. No nails, no tools of metal, just willow grass and instinct. When a person lay down, their body pressed heat into the hides above. The willow beneath didn't let that warmth escape into frozen soil. Modern thermal tests confirmed it a 60% reduction in conductive heat loss compared to bare ground, enough to turn a cold floor into something that remembered fire. The people understood what we often forget. You don't fight the cold, you slow it down. Each layer was a pause between flesh and frost. Each weave a small act of survival built from patience and repetition. Archaeology gives us the proof, but the logic that comes from hands that once tied those branches together, knowing that warmth isn't made by fire alone, it's made by time, touch, and craft. They built warmth from the ground up and slept above the frost not in it. Art became architecture. In the Cheyenne winter tipis of the early 1900s, beauty had a purpose, and warmth was its proof. Behind every central fire pit stood a curved wall of buffalo hide stretched tight on willow frames. Field drawings from the 1904 Plains Survey describe these hides as reflectors, though the people who built them never used that word. To them, it was just smart shelter. Buffalo hide was dense and oily. When cured and smoked, it became slightly reflective, not shiny but warm to the touch. Positioned a few feet behind the fire, the hide captured radiant heat and threw it back across the room. Tests on reconstructed lodges showed a 40% increase in thermal coverage, meaning less wood burned, more hours slept in steady heat. Sometimes the hides were painted geometric red and black, or spirals and lines marking protection spirits. To outsiders, they were decoration. To the tribe, they were prayer and function. Woven together, art turned into architecture. The trick was balance, not too close or the hide would scorch, not too far or the warmth would fade. A living barrier that both absorbed and returned heat. What archaeologists call efficiency, the Cheyenne called wisdom. Every mark, every frame, every inch of hide carried meaning and purpose. They didn't build walls. They built mirrors for fire and taught it to give twice. A single stone kept a child alive through the storm. Across the northern plains and Hudson Bay, the Lakota and Cree used stones not just for fire, but for memory. Excavations from 1938 to 1972 uncovered clusters of scorched river rock, wrapped in fragments of hide and sinew near old bedding sites. What seemed like debris turned out to be one of their quietest survival tools. At dusk, they buried smooth stones in the hearth coals. When the fire burned down, the stones glowed red beneath the ash. Pulled out with wooden tongs, they were wrapped in thick hides, buffalo elk, or even birch bark and set by the sleeping area. Those stones held heat above 45 gravimeters for 5 to 6 hours inside a sealed tipi, long enough for a child to sleep through the coldest part of night, long enough for the storm to pass without frostbite or fear. The logic was simple, the execution exact. Stone remembers heat, hide remembers touch, Together, they turned endurance into rest. Modern thermal studies have confirmed its slow release of radiant heat through dense mineral mass diffused evenly through layers of hide and air. But to them, it wasn't science. It was care. Each stone was chosen, cleaned, heated, and carried not as an object, but as a promise. A single stone, a single night, a single life held in warmth. The forest itself was their furnace. In the eastern woodlands, where winters came damp and thick, the Seneca learned to pull warmth from the trees themselves. Excavations from a 1941 dig site revealed bark panels coated with hardened pine resin hung near the upper vents of longhouses. To most, they looked like scraps, but under soot analysis, the resin told another story. When the fire burned, the rising smoke passed through those sticky sheets. The resin trapped fine ash and soot, clearing the air while the bark absorbed heat. As the resin cooled, it released warmth back into the room. Slow, steady quiet. It was a natural air filter and a thermal buffer in 1 centuries before anyone spoke of insulation or air quality. Less carbon in the lungs, more heat in the home. And when the resin dried, they scraped it, melted it again, and used it for sealing cracks or waterproofing hide. Nothing wasted, everything earned. They didn't divide comfort and survival, they combined them. Every pine, every strip of bark, every drop of resin was a piece of the system, not decoration, not invention, but understanding. The forest didn't just give them wood, it gave them breath, warmth, and balance. To them, the air inside the longhouse wasn't separate from the trees outside. It was the same breath, warmed, filtered, and returned. The forest itself was their furnace. None of this was luck. Every layer of hide, every pit of ash, every curtain of smoke, it all came from trial, error, and time. The Lakota, the Cree, the Cheyenne, they learned by burning, by freezing, by watching what survived the storm. Archaeologists today see patterned carbon rings beneath old lodges, soot trails marking chimney flow fire pits that sat below ground. But to them, it wasn't data. It was memory written in soil. They studied wind like we study weather reports. They read the soil like we read screens. And they knew that warmth wasn't a thing you owned. It was a thing you built one decision at a time. While we measure temperature, they measured endurance. While we chase comfort, they practiced balance. They didn't fight the cold. They understood it. The fire didn't make them masters of nature. It made them students of it. And in that study, in that constant exchange between fire and frost, they found peace. No waste, no fear, no hurry, just rhythm, just knowledge, just life held steady against the wind. Archaeology calls them primitive, but nothing about survival is primitive. Every trick, every layer, pit, hide, and stone was tested not in theory, but in storms. It was precise. It was patient. It was proven. They didn't have tools that beeped or blinked. They had observation, they had time, and they had respect for the cold, for the land, for the line between life and death. What we call ancient, they called necessary, and what we build with machines, they built with memory. So before you plug in another heater, remember the ones who warmed an entire family with ash stone and will. Warmth doesn't come from technology. It comes from attention, from how you shape your shelter, how you use your fire, how you wait for dawn. Because survival, real survival, isn't about power. It's about precision. And the old ways, they still work. Stay by the fire.